Tell us, have you hedged for the cost of fuel? Is that how you go about your business?
Well, as you mentioned, it's slightly good news that oil prices are coming down a little bit, but still, as you mentioned, they are well above last year. And if we go back, when was the last time we saw these $80 Brent prices? That was 4 years ago. And in the airline industry was different 4 years ago, and the other variables were different. For example, in the case of Mexico, back then, 4 years ago, the peso was trading at 13. Now it's close to 20. Plus, there has been, some important additional capacity in the industry, so that has put pressure on yields. So it's more a challenging environment having oil at 80 today versus 4 years ago.
And then, of course, there are macro concerns, particularly surrounding Mexico. United, for example, one of the major U.S. airlines, retreating a little from Mexico. Do you see that as a sign of concern about the broader U.S.-Mexico market?
No, basically, in my view, after Open Skies, that they enter into place in August of 2016. So we had all 2017 with the new airline agreement between Mexico and the U.S. We saw many airlines that were not participant in the markets adding capacity, and naturally, and that happens every time, once they see that their expectations, that the reality is different than the expectations, they change their plans. So going forward, I think we will continue to see this reduction in capacity, but has nothing to do with the dynamics of demand, because we see solid demand in the transborder market. We see better trade figures in last year and during 2018, even in the context of the new Nafta negotiations. So it has to do more with, again, excess capacity rather than with weak demand.
Look, airline stocks at the best of times are very volatile, Mr. Conesa. It's a very tough environment, a challenging thing for an airline CEO. But how do you plan to try and lift that stock price higher, given all the challenges and the weakening fare environment?
Well, yes, it's a challenge. I mean, really, the only way to provide, going forward, better prices of your stock and, more value to the company is to provide, good results. We have been, doing that. We just released our first quarter numbers. Even in the context of weak numbers for the Mexican industry, we were the only ones who provided EBIT profits. So for 32 consecutive quarters, we've been providing positive EBIT, which, as you know, following the airline industry, that's a very good accomplishment. And we will continue to work hard and improving our margins. The JV with Delta is working very well. I mean, in the context of what you mentioned before on the transborder market, I think we have the best value proposition. And going forward in that market, we think that it's going to give us additional value, plus everything that we're doing in the domestic market and with our Dreamliners on our wide-body fleet, which are working great. And now we are able to provide only Dreamliner service in all of our long-haul routes, which, again, that has provided very positive results.
Mr. Conesa, can I ask about your domestic markets from a political perspective? Because you have elections in a few weeks. There's plenty of concern that the anti-establishment leader will come into power at the next election. And how does one, as a leader of a key business in the country, deal with that sort of political uncertainty?
Well, in these electoral campaigns, as you know, the new airport has been in the center of the debate. And, we are the main players in the aviation market in Mexico. We are Mexico's flag carrier. And for us, the new airport is key. So what we've been, in this particular case about the uncertainty whether the new airport will be built or not, our position has been, and this is not a political position, it's a technical position, that Mexico needs a new airport. I mean, if we want to be at the center of development going forward and constitute, the hub of the Americas, we need this new airport. And again, an airport that needs to have the best, connecting times, and that it's, efficiently operating with low costs. So that's a challenge, and we will work, again, with whoever, with the new president, with the party that he represents, to make the case that this new airport is needed, and that it's going to be good for the aviation industry, good for the economy, good for Mexico, good for job creation. And this is the example of the new airport, but with the other, the political and economic agenda that the new president will have, I'm sure that we will be able to work and convince them that, that Aeromexico and the airline industry can not only contribute to further growth, but be key, in the development of the country going forward.
So focus on the airport, focus on infrastructure. Let me ask you about how you navigate the Mexican peso, because amid this election uncertainty, we have seen a reverse in the fortunes of the Mexican peso. It had been one of the best performers of the year. It's now gone into reverse. We're down about 9%. A lot of that's on the back of the strength of the US dollar. But have you been hedging that out? How do you navigate currency volatility as a leader of a business in Mexico?
Well, in our case, we have a natural hedge because we are a very diversified business. Roughly, 60% of our revenues are denominated in non-peso currency. Most of it in dollars, but we have yens, we have euros, and as any other airline, most of our costs, around 2/3, are linked to the US dollar. So in our particular case, we have a natural hedge. So we are not active, in the derivatives market, financially hedging our currency exposure. What we do actively is hedge against oil fluctuations, but not against the exchange rate. So that's a plus of our business model. But obviously, going forward, if the peso continues to depreciate, it will have an impact on demand, on real activity, and that will have an impact on our business and the rest of the business in Mexico as well, of course.
Andres, you have been a big Boeing customer. There was a little bit of a question mark over what you would do going forward, maybe Bombardier or another company. What is the position of Aeromexico now?
Yeah. At the start of the year, we were analyzing the possibility of modernizing our regional fleet. In the main line, in Aeromexico, we have an all Boeing fleet. In Aeromexico Connect, which is our subsidiary, we have an all Embraer fleet. We have been analyzing the possibility of bringing the C Series in the context of the U.S. Trade Representative decision of imposing duties to the export of C Series to the U.S., which was resolved. After the resolution of that, it opened a window of additional time to analyze this decision. So we're currently, analyzing whether to bring the new C Series, the new E2, the Embraer plane, or staying as we are, which we have a relatively modern fleet of 10 years with Embraer's 190s. And we will, hopefully make the decision in the second half of the year.
All right, and then just finally, before we let you go, best destination for us in Mexico this year?
Well, all of the U.S., even though it's been tough times, but they are working great again with the JV with Delta. And, our European consolidation is also, working very well together with Asia. And we see lots of traffic, not only to the traditional Mexican destinations, as tourism destinations, Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, Cabo, but also solid numbers in the center of Mexico, particularly where all the manufacturing export base is located. And we continue, for example, we just opened one flight between Bajío, which is in the center of Mexico, and Detroit in the auto industry, and it's working great. And these are the benefits, of that the JV is bringing to the business and the leisure travelers.